stand still for a moment, not as a figure of speech. Actually stop. Feel the floor beneath your feet. Feel your weight pressing down, the slight give of whatever surface holds you, the stillness of the air against your skin. Notice your hands. Notice that nothing is pulling them sideways. Notice that your coffee, if you have it, is not sloshing. Notice that you feel, with perfect certainty, that you are not moving. Now hold that certainty. Because you are, at this precise moment, traveling at approximately 1,770 kilometers per hour. Not in a car, not in a plane, through the skin of the Earth itself, carried by a spinning rock hurtling around a star, inside a galaxy that is itself moving at 600 kilometers per second through space. And your body, this extraordinary instrument of perception, reports nothing. Not a whisper, not a tremor, not the faintest hint of a wind. The most sensitive biological detection apparatus in the known universe is sitting inside a supersonic carousel, and it has decided to tell you that you are perfectly, absolutely, cosmically still. That is not a failure of your senses. That is the most sophisticated act of physics your body performs before breakfast. Something has just shifted in the way the question works. You felt it. The floor that seemed like a fixed point a moment ago is now a surface on a sphere, and the sphere is a passenger on a gravitational rail, and the rail curves through a fabric that is not empty and not still. You have not moved a millimeter. And yet, the thing you called stillness has just changed its meaning entirely. You have been asking the wrong question your entire life. The question was never, why do we feel the spinning? The question, the one that keeps a physicist awake at night, is this: why, given everything the universe is doing to you right now, do you feel anything at all? There is an old belief, reasonable and almost certainly yours, that feeling motion requires motion. That to sense speed, you must be buffeted by it. The wind in the hair, the press of acceleration against the chest, the lurching stomach in a fast elevator. The belief says, if I feel nothing, nothing is happening. And for the scale of objects you evolved to navigate, this belief has served your ancestors well for 4 million years. A rock moving at human speeds disturbs the air. A running animal leaves a trail of crushed grass and sound. At the scales your nervous system was calibrated for, motion leaves evidence. But here is the problem of scale, and it is the same problem that tore Newtonian physics apart at the seams. Your intuition was built for medium-sized objects moving at medium speeds. It was not built for the physics of reference frames. It was not designed to detect the difference between rest and constant motion, because for 4 million years of walking on a savanna, that difference had no survival value whatsoever. The Earth's rotation is not fast enough to be felt by a body that has no reason to feel it. And that no reason is not a gap in your biology. It is the deepest principle in all of physics, wearing a disguise so perfect that it looks like nothing happening. What you believe: the Earth spins, and because it spins, you should feel it. What the mechanism reveals: constant motion and rest are, in the most fundamental sense science has ever articulated, the same state. Not similar, not close, identical. And by the time you understand why, the floor beneath your feet will have become a completely different object. Your body is not a speedometer. It is a change meter. This is the razor sentence, the most compressed and physically precise version of what your vestibular and proprioceptive system actually is. Not a device that measures motion, but a device that measures the rate of change of motion. The technical term is acceleration. The lived experience is everything you interpret as feeling movement. And the distinction between those two things, movement and change of movement, is the axis on which all of modern physics turns. The system responsible for this is housed in your inner ear, specifically in 3 fluid-filled semicircular canals oriented in 3 perpendicular planes, one for each spatial dimension. The fluid inside those canals is called endolymph. When you turn your head, the canal turns with it. But the fluid, due to its inertia, momentarily resists. It lags behind, pressing against hair-like cells called stereocilia, bending them, triggering an electrical signal that races to your brain in approximately 8 milliseconds. 8 milliseconds is the time it takes light to travel 2,400 kilometers. In the same duration, your vestibular system has already filed a motion report, translated it into neural code, and sent it toward a brain that will use it to adjust your eyes, your posture, your entire muscular field before you have consciously registered that you moved at all. Now for the fact that almost no one knows. That system, the vestibular system, does not operate in isolation. It is in constant real-time negotiation with your visual cortex, your proprioceptive network in your joints and muscles, and your cerebellum, a structure that contains more neurons than the rest of your brain combined, roughly 69 billion of them packed into a volume smaller than your fist. That cerebellum is running predictive models of your body's position in space approximately 10 times per second, comparing predicted position to actual position and issuing correction signals before the error is even large enough to register. It is not reacting to the world. It is anticipating it, running a simulation of physical reality faster than your consciousness can follow, using a predictive architecture that engineers building autonomous vehicles are still trying to replicate and still failing to match. The common belief is that stillness is the absence of sensation. What science knows is that stillness is the most computationally expensive thing your body produces. The feeling of not moving requires more continuous neural work than the feeling of falling. Your brain is not passive when you stand still. It is fighting, every millisecond, with billions of neurons, to suppress the noise of a universe that never stops moving, and to give you the gift of a stable ground beneath your feet. But here is the number that changes the weight of all of this. The endolymph in your semicircular canals responds to angular accelerations as small as 0.5 degrees per second squared. The Earth's rotation produces a centripetal acceleration at the equator of approximately 0.234 meters per second squared, less than 0.35% of gravitational acceleration. Not only is that change constant, making it invisible to a change detection system, it is also, at your latitude, almost certainly below the threshold your canals were designed to catch. The Earth's spin is not hiding from you. It is simply too steady and too gentle for a system built to detect predators, not planets. Now watch what happens in the first second, after you stop and pay attention to your own stillness. The moment you become conscious of not moving, your visual system locks onto environmental reference points. The edge of a table, a wall, a horizon. Your proprioceptive system queries your joints, the angle of your ankle, the tension in your knee, the compression in the discs of your lumbar spine. Your cerebellum receives all of this simultaneously and cross-references it against the gravitational vector, the direction of 9.8 meters per second squared, pulling straight down through the center of the Earth. In 1 second, your brain has triangulated your position in three-dimensional space using 3 independent sensory systems, weighted those signals by their historical reliability, and produced a single unified representation of your body's location that feels, from the inside, like simply standing here. This is layer 1, and it obeys a physical principle with a name: Galilean relativity, extended by Einstein into special relativity. The principle, in its most compressed form. The laws of physics are identical in all inertial reference frames. There is no experiment you can perform inside a closed, smoothly moving system that will tell you whether you are moving or at rest. This is not a biological limitation. It is a fundamental feature of space-time. Your vestibular system didn't fail to detect the Earth's rotation. It correctly reported what physics says is true. In the absence of acceleration, you are at rest. You are always, by definition, at rest relative to yourself. Now watch the second layer, the one that unfolds across the next several minutes. Your cerebellum is not merely tracking your position. It is learning the baseline. Every time you stand still in a particular environment, your predictive models are updated. The noise floor of your proprioceptive input is recalibrated. The resting tension in your postural muscles is adjusted. And here is the mechanism that no one expects. This recalibration process involves your cerebellum communicating with your hypothalamus, which regulates cortisol, and with your reticular activating system, which controls your baseline level of arousal and alertness. Standing still, genuinely still, not restlessly still, suppresses the stress axis of your body through a pathway that involves the cerebellum, the brainstem, and the autonomic nervous system in a loop that takes approximately 3 to 5 minutes to complete its first full cycle. A 2016 study by researchers at University College London, led by neuroscientist Carl Friston, formalized the mechanism within what is now called predictive processing theory. The brain's fundamental job is to minimize prediction error, and the experience of stillness is the brain's readout of a moment when its predictions match reality almost perfectly. When prediction error is low, the ascending arousal system's quiet. Cortisol drops. Heart rate variability increases. A measurable signal of parasympathetic dominance. The nervous system's rest and repair state. The subjective sense is calm. The objective mechanism is a brain that has temporarily stopped losing energy to uncertainty. Compare this to what the pharmaceutical industry builds to achieve the same state. Benzodiazepine drugs, the class that includes diazepam and lorazepam, reduce neural excitability by enhancing the effect of GABA, the brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. They take 15 to 45 minutes to reach peak plasma concentration, cost between $2 and $20 per dose, carry a non-trivial risk of dependence, and suppress a broad enough swath of neural activity that they impair memory formation and motor coordination as side effects. The stillness you are sitting in right now achieves a narrower, more targeted version of the same neurochemical shift, reducing prediction error, lowering the ascending arousal signal, increasing parasympathetic tone, in approximately 3 minutes, for free, with no impairment and no withdrawal profile. The orders of magnitude here deserve a moment. The body's version costs $0, requires 0 milligrams of any external molecule, and achieves the effect with a precision that drug delivery systems cannot yet approximate, because the brain knows exactly where to send the signal, and a pill does not. The third layer is the one nobody sees coming. The effect of genuinely perceived stillness on the default mode network, the set of brain regions most active when you are not focused on any external task, has been documented to alter the brain's functional connectivity in ways that persist for hours after the experience. A 2019 paper by Judson Brewer and colleagues at Brown University showed that rest states associated with low prediction error experience produce measurable decreases in posterior cingulate cortex activity, a region strongly correlated with the self-referential rumination that underlies anxiety and low-grade chronic stress. This means that the field effect of your 5 minutes of standing still ripples forward in time, reducing a specific neural signature of mental noise, not just now, but throughout the next several hours of your day. The gesture does not stay inside the moment. It extends. It alters the shape of the neural field you will move through for the rest of the afternoon. The chronic absence of this, the absence of perceived genuine stillness, is not a modern preference. It is a modern pathology with a specific mechanism, and the symptoms are ones you have felt but almost certainly blamed on something else. Here is the reformulation sentence. What you call mental fatigue is, in large part, the measurable energy cost of a brain that has not been allowed to successfully minimize its prediction error in days. The brain of a person who has not experienced genuine stillness. No screens, no background noise, no task switching, no anticipation for more than 48 hours is a brain running a simulation of the world that is increasingly out of calibration. The predictive models accumulate error. The cerebellum keeps issuing corrections that don't resolve. The reticular activating system stays elevated, maintaining a state of vigilance that was designed for brief encounters with predators, not for the chronic low-grade overstimulation of a notification-dense environment. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the body's long-range stress signaling system, interprets sustained prediction error as danger and maintains elevated cortisol tone. And cortisol, at chronically elevated levels, does something specific and well-documented. It suppresses hippocampal neurogenesis, the birth of new neurons in the memory and navigation center of the brain, at a rate that measurable changes in hippocampal volume can be detected in chronic stress subjects within weeks. The timeline is important here, and it needs a physical comparison to feel real. 48 hours without stillness begins the recalibration failure. 2 weeks of sustained overstimulation produces detectable changes in heart rate variability. Measurable autonomic dysregulation. 3 months of chronic prediction error overload corresponds to hippocampal volume changes detectable on standard MRI. In geological time, 3 months is less than the blink of an eye. In terms of neural architecture, it is the difference between a well-maintained instrument and one that has been running in an environment it was never designed for. The process is entropic, in the precise thermodynamic sense. Without the input of organized, low-noise information, which is what stillness provides to a prediction-hungry brain, the system drifts toward higher disorder. The symptoms of that drift are not mysterious. They are the exact readout you would expect from a precision instrument running without calibration. Decreased accuracy, increased noise, higher energy cost for the same output, and an increasing sense that the instrument is unreliable. You call this anxiety, brain fog, emotional reactivity, and exhaustion. The mechanism calls it entropy accumulation in a prediction system without a reset protocol. 48 hours is not a long time. It is roughly the duration of a standard weekend. And yet, the majority of adults in high-stimulus environments do not experience a single episode of genuine perceptual stillness. No screens, ambient silence, no active anticipation within that window. The drift has already begun before Monday. Your vestibular system was not the only thing shaped by the spinning Earth. Every sensory system you carry was calibrated, over millions of years, inside a world that offered a specific ratio of signal to noise, a ratio that included regular, daily periods of low stimulus, high stillness experience. Night, rest, the absence of predators and tasks and sound. Your nervous system did not merely tolerate these periods, it required them. And the requirement is not poetic. It is structural, written into the architecture of the systems themselves. But here is the connection that no wellness framing ever makes, because wellness framing doesn't know what to do with evolutionary timescales. The mechanism that stillness activates is not a relaxation response. It is, in the most precise evolutionary sense, your system's interface with the physics of the environment at the timescale of the planet. Consider what a steady gravitational field actually is. The 9.8 meters per second squared pulling you toward the Earth's center right now is not a background condition. It is a constant, omnipresent force field threading through every cell of your body. And your body has spent 4 million years learning to read it with extraordinary precision. The otolith organs in your inner ear, the utricle and saccule, sitting adjacent to the semicircular canals, contain tiny calcium carbonate crystals called otoconia, each one individually dense enough to settle in response to gravity. They are your body's gravitational sensors. They are always on. They are reading the planet. And the signal they produce, a steady, reliable, low-noise gravitational baseline, is the physical anchor against which your entire proprioceptive and vestibular system calibrates itself continuously without interruption. This means that when you are genuinely still, something specific happens at the level of the gravitational interface. Your otolith organs, freed from the noise of self-generated motion and environmental vibration, report a signal that is maximally clean. Pure gravity. And that clean signal, researchers call it gravitational coherence, though the study of this specific channel is still in early stages, propagates through the sensory hierarchy and provides the most stable possible baseline for the cerebellum's predictive models. The brain's prediction error drops not because the world has become simpler, but because the physical signal it is reading has become maximally reliable. You have given the instrument the best possible input. Now put that against the 4 million years of evolutionary context. and then against the 10,000 years of agriculture and the 60 years of screens. For the overwhelming majority of our biological existence, the gravitational signal was available, clean, and regularly accessed. The human body that is reading this signal is not a modern body that happens to have an inner ear. It is a 4-million-year-old gravitational transducer that happens to be wearing contemporary clothing. Modernity did not build a new body. It put an ancient instrument in an environment it never anticipated, one where the gravitational baseline is constantly competing with vibrational and electromagnetic noise, where stillness is scheduled rather than structural, and where the clean signal that the system evolved to read is available only in moments that must be deliberately sought. The gesture of genuine stillness is not a wellness intervention. It is the restoration of a physical input that the body has expected for 4 million years and has been systematically denied for 60. If you subscribe now and hit the like button, you will see the next script in this series the moment it is released. And I promise you that the next gesture is even more unremarkable than standing still, and even more consequential. Here is the minimum effective dose, expressed in physical terms rather than wellness terms, because the physics is what makes the protocol precise. Duration. The 3 to 5 minute window is not arbitrary. It corresponds to the time required for the first full cycle of cerebellum to hypothalamus recalibration feedback. The loop measured in the Friston predictive processing research. Less than 2 minutes produces partial effect. More than 5 minutes in the first session produces diminishing marginal returns on the neural calibration signal, though not on subjective experience. For a first trial, 5 minutes is the target. Posture. Stand or sit with your spine in a position that requires minimal active muscular correction. Not rigid, not collapsed. The reason is physical. The proprioceptive load of maintaining a difficult posture competes with the gravitational signal for processing bandwidth in the same neural pathways. The cleaner the postural signal, the less noise in the system the cerebellum must filter. A wall is useful not for comfort, but for calibration. The contact gives your proprioceptive system a fixed reference point, reducing the computational load of position estimation. Eyes, open, softly focused on a point at or below horizontal, not moving. The visual system suppresses vestibular noise through a mechanism called visual vestibular integration. When the visual field is stable, the vestibular prediction error drops. This is why nausea on a boat decreases when you look at the horizon. Looking at a still, distant point gives your visual cortex the cleanest possible signal and allows the vestibular system to reduce its gain, its sensitivity, which quiets the entire prediction machinery. Breath. Uncontrolled, but noticed. The act of noticing your breath without regulating it provides a steady, low-frequency sensory anchor that feeds into the interoceptive network, the body's internal sensing system, without adding noise. Controlled breathing alters the signal. Uncontrolled but attended breathing reads it. The error that nullifies the effect is checking the time. The moment you check the time, your visual system shifts, your anticipation rises, your prediction error increases, and the recalibration cycle is interrupted. If you cannot commit to 5 minutes without checking the time, set a silent timer before you begin, and then treat the timer as the boundary of the experiment. One interruption, if it happens, does not invalidate the session, but it does reset the 3 to 5 minute window. The window counts continuous, low-noise time. Variations for physical limitations. This protocol requires no specific mobility. If standing is difficult, the seated version produces equivalent vestibular effect. The otolith organs respond to gravity, regardless of whether you are vertical or supported. If silence is inaccessible, low-frequency continuous sound, not music, not speech, not variable sound, produces less interference than intermittent sound. A fan, a consistent mechanical hum. The goal is not sensory deprivation. The goal is sensory steadiness. You will know the mechanism is active not by feeling relaxed. That is a downstream effect, not the signal. You will know it is active when the quality of your hearing changes. When the room sounds slightly more three-dimensional. when ambient sounds you were not tracking suddenly become audible. This is not a mystical experience. It is the measurable effect of a descending arousal system that has lowered its threshold. Your brain, now running at lower gain, is receiving signals it was previously filtering out as irrelevant. The world has not changed. Your detection threshold has. And that shift in threshold is the physical signature that the recalibration is underway. Before you reach the end of this video, before the next thing on your screen claims your attention, consider subscribing and giving this a like. Because the next time we speak, we will be talking about a gesture so automatic that you perform it dozens of times per hour without ever noticing. And the cascade it triggers will make this one look simple. There is a temptation. When physics reveals that the Earth moves at 1,670 kilometers per hour beneath your feet, to feel small. To feel that your stillness is an illusion maintained by the kindness of scale. But that reading is backwards. The reason you feel nothing is not because the universe has hidden something from you. It is because the universe has given you, through 4 million years of extraordinarily patient engineering, a body that correctly identifies what is physically true. In an inertial frame, in a system moving at constant velocity, there is no experiment, no perception, no sensation that can distinguish motion from rest. This is not a biological quirk. This is Einstein's first postulate of special relativity, written in calcium crystals and endolymph and 70 billion neurons, embodied in the architecture of a system so precise that it answers a question physics spent centuries to formalize. Your body does not fail to feel the spinning. Your body correctly measures it as zero, because zero is the right answer. And that is the strangest, most vertiginous fact in all of this. Not that the Earth is moving while you stand still, but that your body, this 3-kilogram collection of organized chemistry and electrical gradients, assembled over geological time from the same atoms that built the stars. Your body knows general relativity, not as a theory, as a practice, as the answer it has been giving, silently, correctly, every moment of every day, to a question you only just learned to ask. The universe runs on laws that do not change with scale. The same principle that lets a photon travel through empty space without a preferred frame of rest is the principle your inner ear enacts every time you stand still and feel nothing. Physics does not stop at the boundary of the skin. It is what the skin is made of. And the greatest discovery available to you, in this moment, is not a formula or a fact. It is the recognition that when you ask the right question about your own silence, the answer turns out to be the deepest truth physics has ever found. The body at rest and the body in motion are, in the only sense that matters, the same thing, and only the change between them is real.